will kick things off. But I don't know, whilst we're waiting, if anyone who wants to put where they're from in the world and if they're a Code Institute alumni or whatever else is that they do. Hello, Andrew from the Southwest. Thanks for joining us. I'm in the Southeast myself, in sunny Essex this afternoon. As you can probably see, a bit of a glare coming in from the sun. Vanessa from Stockholm in Sweden, Code Institute student. Awesome to have you along. Our panelists today, myself, Sarah Marie and Paul, we're actually in 3 different countries. So it's good to have a lot of people from all over joining us. So I can see we've hit a few more in the participants. So I think I'm going to kick things off. So yeah, firstly, thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon, morning or evening, wherever you are in the world. So throughout the discussion today, there will be a few polls we'd love for you to get involved with. And I believe the first one will be coming up now. So the first poll is, does technology have the ability to make you feel alone? Yes, no, or not sure. We'll give yourselves a moment or two to run through them. But just while we're waiting for that, I want to say again, thank you to everybody that's joining. Obviously, it's been sort of Mental Health Awareness Week, and so we're following this year's theme of loneliness, hence the first question that has popped up on the poll. So we'll wait for the results to come through and we can digest them in a second. So we've got, does technology have the ability to make you feel alone? So we've got 44% saying yes, 31% of no, and 25% we've got not sure. That's interesting. I think we'll come on to some discussions throughout the webinar on that. But no, thank you for your input, guys. There will be some more polls to follow. I wanted to say also, unfortunately, we're short of one panelist today. They've had to pick something up at the last moment. So unfortunately, we're not going to be joined by Alex from Inspire. But we have the lovely Sarah Marie and Paul that joined us as well. So they're going to be here to give some of their really cool insight. And an FYI, they work for 2 of the coolest companies in the world. So I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about them in a moment. So to set the agenda, we're going to expect a 1 hour of a panel discussion with a live Q&A throughout. And then we're going to have half an hour of a networking session for those who wish to continue the conversation further. And like myself, enter a bit of a healthy debate. So I'd like everyone to be joining us today to please consider professional help if you do feel triggered by anything we highlight at all. Reach out to myself or the panelists if there's anything you'd like to discuss. As I said, coming off the back of Mental Health Awareness Week, we all want to be here for each other, and that's why we wanted to set up this webinar about getting connected. So please also note this is going to be a recording session, and we will be uploading this to our Soda Social YouTube channel, so that you can also access our previous webinars, and we're going to be formulating a podcast with the audio from this on our Soda Social Spotify channel. So there's a couple of bits you can check out once this is finished in the next week or two. So there are subtitles for people that need them as well. And please check in the chat function for how to access this. Brilliant. So let's get started. As I said, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome. I'm going to be your host and chair for this webinar. And my name personally is George O'Connell. So I am the head of social at Trust in Soda, and I'm also a recruitment consultant in the tech space. So I specialize in software engineering and mobile development myself. So very interested to see what sort of projects are going to be coming up in this hackathon in the next week. So as I mentioned, it has been Mental Health Awareness Week last week, I believe, and this year's theme, in fact, has been loneliness. So I've got a couple of statistics here for you. And as of 2020, so many Americans have felt lonely over the past years that public health officials have started to express concern over a loneliness epidemic. So since the onset of the pandemic, which has of course affected all of us, this has unfortunately gotten worse. But research has been commissioned by an Eden Project initiative, and it's called The Big Lunch. Basically found that disconnected communities may be costing the UK economy 32 billion every year, as well as obviously sort of costing themselves, which is very, very unfortunate. But today we're going to speak about some ways to sort of get through that, and some of the best ways, you know, from our panelists and advice that they have and their stories as well. So, you know, we've seen according to the UK that young people, people who are unemployed, full-time students and single parents are more likely to feel alone. But this means that we need to find new ways to connect with people and stay in touch. And so if there is any point throughout the webinar that anybody who's watching or tuning in would like to share their best tips, their best facts of the best way that they've got connected or the ways they've combated loneliness, we'd love to hear from you. I'm sure we'll be talking about it as well. So put anything in the chat, any advice you've got or ways you've come over stuff as well would be awesome. So we really have had to rely ultimately on technology a lot more for communication since the start of the pandemic. You know, while it has been a valuable tool, many might feel exhausted by, you know, online quizzes or the experience of Zoom fatigue. And so if you're feeling burnt out from the ways you connect with people, try out some new ways. I was talking personally about picking up the phone and having an old-fashioned conversation, hearing somebody's voice, you know, going out for a drink for somebody, going to get a bite to eat, going on a bike ride with someone. You know, there's lots of different ways we can sort of look at it. But again, we want to make it as, you know, engaging as possible and interactive. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat as well. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. So as I said, we're joined by our lovely panelists. And if I could get each of you to please introduce yourself, your role, your experience, and why today's discussion is important for you. If we'll start with Sarah Marie, please.
All right, make sure I'm off mute first. That's the joys of virtual stuff now. Hi, everybody. I am Sarah Marie Pernicaro. I am based in Atlanta, Georgia, on the East Coast of the United States. I am currently a senior technical program manager at Microsoft. I started back at the end of October 2020. Prior to that, I'll go back a little further. I was a front-end web developer at General Motors for about 5.5 years. I worked on the owner center side, so it was customer facing. In the first half, we worked with the Opel Vauxhall vehicles in the European side. And then once General Motors decided to sell that, we switched back over to the American cars, and I worked on owner center for the American cars as well. After that, I moved over to Porsche, and I was a senior consultant with them working on the vehicle tracker. And all of this was front end based, so building applications that were customer facing, used for mobile phones, tablets, and all of that fun stuff that we carry with us everywhere we go. And currently, as a senior technical program manager at Microsoft, I work with the developers as well as customers, and I am essentially the liaison between both of them. I talk to the developers, figure out what they can provide. I talk to the customers to figure out what they want and figure out how that can be working together, since the engineers are usually heads down and they just want the direction, and the customers like to give the direction. So I'm that person to provide the translation between the two to make sure that all communication, is heard and understood, and everyone's voices gets heard as we move forward with the projects. And they're usually, you know, 3 to 6 months based, and it's pretty pretty quick turnaround for projects, which keeps everything super interesting and fun. That's me. Thank you for joining.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for joining as well, Sarah Marie. Thank you for your intro. Great to have you here. Now I'll pass it over to Paul.
Cheers, George. Thanks, everybody. Hi, everybody. So I'm Paul King, and I'm a CI graduate. So it's great to see a lot of people here have actually done the course or are still going through it themselves. Currently, I work for Google, and it's as a software development apprentice. So to put it plainly, I get paid to learn a lot of new tools. It's pretty much the dream, because I'm not sure at my current level, would I be able to do some of the crazy stuff that Sarah Marie is doing or has done in her past? But yeah, it's a pleasure to work for them. And at the end of the day, like, I think I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot of common ground with a lot of the people that are here, because I understand the journey from the Code Institute side anyways. I had a lot of struggles myself when I was going through the course. And yeah, I'm just hoping that from this, like, please just ask any questions, because I know there was a lot of questions when I was going through the course, and even when I was just finding out about new technologies that I wished I'd asked. Me and Sarah Marie and George were here now to basically answer anything that we possibly can, and it's going to be as honest and as forward as possible. So if anybody wants to ask something and they can't ask it here, or they don't want to post it publicly, reach out to myself, reach out to anybody on the panel as well, and yeah, we'll help you wherever we can. Keep it short and sweet, and yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Well, yeah, no, great to have you here, Paul. And yeah, I think for the benefit of all of our Code Institute students on here as well, it's yeah, just evidence that, you know, Paul has moved now into part of the part of the team at Google, and yeah, it's a fantastic journey. And yeah, it's what's to come in the future for a lot of you. So yeah, some really exciting stuff. And again, thank you for joining us. So yeah, to jump straight in, and you know, really on, you know, the topic of sort of loneliness and mental health. The first question, really, I'll fire over to Sarah Marie first, is, you know, what does loneliness mean to you?
So that, I think, first and foremost, I want to say there's different forms of loneliness, in my opinion. I mean, there's full-on isolation. Thanks, COVID. We've all, I think, experienced that to a degree. But then there's also loneliness in the sense where you might be surrounded by people, but family, friends, whomever, but you just don't feel a connection to them. You feel no one understands you. So I think it's what loneliness means to me. What I'm trying to say won't necessarily mean what loneliness means for everybody else. But for me, but also all forms of loneliness are valid. And they are important and should be addressed. So to me, loneliness means you can't get the support that you need, you don't feel supported, or you don't feel heard. So quick backstory for me, before I started at Microsoft, I was 8.5 months pregnant. The pandemic hit. I was first child. He's great now, but I was really excited to celebrate with friends and family and get support, because being new to this whole motherhood role, getting a new job, I thought, you know, I could turn to people, and pandemic hit and it was complete isolation with my husband and myself. And it was very scary, because I felt like I was doing this alone, even though I knew there was millions and, you know, people in the same boat as I was. And I'm sure there were other, you know, new moms coming as well. So the idea of loneliness for me is being alone, knowing that you're not, but not knowing where to turn to for support is a very real and very scary situation. I thankfully, you know, have a very supportive husband. And thanks to technology, I could, you know, call friends, do FaceTime. I even had people, when we felt comfortable, come to the edge of our driveway, and we would talk back and forth, very, very socially distanced, just to get that interactions that, you know, humans and all creatures usually instinctively need. So to me, loneliness is the isolation and feeling like you can't connect to anybody when you want to. And I think a way it impacts your mental health is, you know, you might doubt yourself. You might wonder, why me? Is it only me when it's not only you? Even though it doesn't feel like it at the time. And just the idea of being able to reach out and talk to people when you can, you know, friends, families, even a pet is is really really important. I utilize our neighbor's dog a lot to you know, get some interaction with anyone else. But yeah, that's loneliness for me.
Nice. Yeah, summed up very well. I think it's that knowing you have people to reach out to, but not, you know, not being able to do it. It is a big one. And Paul, I don't know if there's any further thoughts you had, you know, off the back of that, and what it's meant to you.
Yeah, I mean, like the way that Sarah Marie phrased it there is pretty much perfect. Like it's sometimes having the option, but not really being quite sure how to avail of that option. You know, I know some people think that there are supports there and they're not really sure what path to take, whether it's online or in your personal life. And I know with me during the pandemic, for me, a lot of it was like I knew that I had support there and I had the choice, but I didn't want to nearly be a burden on somebody else by getting them to support me, you know. And that can be very isolating as well because you feel like in your process of trying to get help, you might actually be causing somebody else to feel lonely or feel isolated or overburdened as well. And I think like, yeah, as Lisa, or sorry, as Sarah Marie said, like I think loneliness is very trying to think of the correct phrase, like it's very biased to yourself. Your loneliness feels completely different to somebody else's loneliness, and how you address it, I suppose, is completely different because you need to find your own path, your own way of being able to address it or deal with it as well. But yeah, that's kind of what it means to me.
Awesome. No, thank you again. And yeah, it's I think it's subjective to each person, each situation. I saw something the other day says often the most popular people that have the most around them are some of the loneliest in the world. And it's because there's not always people don't always say, "Oh, how are you?" You seem lonely. Whereas if there's so many people around them, they wouldn't think that. They wouldn't even think to ask the question. They might have a smile on their face, but often inside it's a different story. So no, again, yeah, thank you guys. And a question for Sarah Marie moving on is, in terms of like the community side of things, how do you think that communities can support mental health and well-being, to sort of help tackle loneliness?
Uh, I mean, that's a loaded question because I feel the answer is so simple and it's easier said than done. And for me, that is talk about it, be aware of it, accept it, know that it is not a taboo to talk about, especially with mental health. I mean, burnout is a real thing. People, they didn't just make up a fun word of, play on words. It was people have a breaking point, whether it's being lonely for too long, whether it's being overworked and stressed. There's again different types of burnout, but for communities to be able to be aware of it and also being aware of it starting with young kids. I mean, now that have a son, he has a limit, and that limit is not the same as any other 2-year old. He gets tired faster doing this, or he wants to do this, and it's just understanding and adjusting to figure out what works for myself as a parent and him as my child, to figure out, when he's having a meltdown, what's he trying to tell me? And that's the same thing with loneliness. People will maybe drop subtle hints that, they hope someone will pick up on. And even if you're not sure if it's a subtle hint or not, address it, just say like, oh man, I'm bored out of my mind. They might be joking, but it could be incredibly real. And you just say, well, why don't we go meet up and have a coffee? Why don't you go walk in the park? Or, I'm looking into this. Do you want to do it? And again, COVID is throwing a huge monkey wrench in everything. So, you have to figure out the level of comfort level that everyone works with everything else. But hopefully, as the world starts to open back up, address the loneliness, take things at face value. When people they reach out, and some people they just might want feelers because again, the feeling of loneliness, you think it might be you. And I think Paul, you said it beautifully. Sometimes you feel like you're a burden, and I think that is something that we as humans need to sort of get out of our head, because even though we are individuals, we don't thrive, unless we're probably apart. And of course everyone needs their time and space alone, but as a whole, as a society, we have to work together to support each other in their different ways. And again, that is addressing the loneliness that people share and the isolation and those subtle, very subtle, if you want to say cry for help, or just attentions of please help me get out of this funk, so to speak, because I'm sure it's a slippery path. And, if you feel you're completely by yourself and your community isn't there to support you, who do you have? And a community is a great place to start, whether going to the library, getting a library card. You don't know who you'll meet there. Also, libraries are still a thing. Um, going to the coffee shop, again, meeting up with friends, just maybe getting out of your comfort zone. And again, as I'm saying this, I am fully aware, easier said than done. But if you can take the steps and being able to reach out to other people, I think, in your community, make connections, don't make it a taboo. It starts with people speaking up and speaking out.
Awesome. No, I agree. And I think, as you mentioned, that the community aspect of it, having people, sometimes even people in a similar situation to yourself, can be beneficial because you're struggling with the same problem. But again, good reminder for everybody that libraries do still exist as well. It's been a little while since I last went to one. But again, it's places like that, things, do you want to go for coffee? Let's have a chat. Just human interaction, I think, is something we've all missed. I don't know, Sarah Marie, when you and I spoke separately before this, I said, going back to an office was a little bit daunting. Do we shake hands? Do we hug? Are we high fiving? What is it? And I think, slowly and hopefully people start to sort of readjust again. And hopefully that's when we start to see, less people sort of suffering with that sort of mental health problem of loneliness as well. Now, Paul, I don't know if there's anything you want to say off the back of that, or I can jump into the next point. Cool. So one that Sarah Marie you and I discussed before this as well is, overcoming the stigma of loneliness. And I think you sort of summed it up there as well. But is there anything more you would add to that? I think you said it was a loaded question last time we spoke.
Yeah. It still is.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that it is a loaded question also means it's an important question, because if it wasn't, then there would be an easy answer and we would all know how to combat loneliness. And I say that again with quick sidebar, like with being a new mom and a parent, I was very much stressed being up in the middle of the night, feeling alone. Why is my husband sleeping so soundly through these babies crying? And just the idea that, again, you're not alone. I found a little community that it was on Facebook, and it was just, hey, if you're a mom and you're up and you need someone to chat with, there's other moms who are up all around the world that you can link to. And it's, again, just being aware of it and finding resources in order to help yourself out. And work can help, school can help. Just making sure that, to combat it is just being aware and talking about it. As I said before, I'll say it again. It's not a taboo. It's not anything against you that you're feeling lonely. It's not anything against your state of mind, what you're currently doing. People feel lonely for various reasons. And easier said than done. If you can isolate what that reason is and find ways to combat it, maybe start with small wins. Hey, I'm going to go on a 5-minute walk today and count how many dogs I see today. And then make it 10. Maybe I'll ask to pet the dog. Maybe, I can, as time goes on, you build a friendship, maybe you get a dog, who knows? Just figuring out how to attack it one step at a time, loneliness, instead of taking it head on, I think would help to combat it. Give yourself small wins, small victories, but also being aware that yes, things can slip up, things can change, and that's okay. And you're allowed to make mistakes or have a very bad lonely day, and that's fine. Take that moment, then get right back into it, and try to do these small wins. I definitely base my life in a sense with milestones. Like, oh my gosh, if only I can get to my son being 3 months, if only I can get this new job, if only I can do this. Like, that's my mile mark. There's where I have to go. But also throw in fun things. My next one is we're finally going on a family vacation. It's next month. We're very excited. I'm very excited. And again, it's just goals that you're looking forward to and stuff to be excited and stuff you can control. I think with loneliness, you feel like you're out of control of conquering that. So finding ways to be able to control it is a good way to help try and combat it.
Nice. Yeah, focusing on the now, what can I do now? Not how am I going to be feeling in 6 months time? Am I still going to be feeling lonely in 2 weeks? How am I going to get over it? It's, what can I do here right and now? And it's interesting to hear you said there was the forum you reached out to on Facebook. Examples like that, is that I wouldn't have even thought something like that existed, and people might not think, oh, there's nothing out there for me, but if you look and you sort of reach out, and I think often reaching out to get the help, as we said, is the toughest part, but make that step, then you make another step, then another step, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, things have really changed. So yeah, again, thank you for the input on that, Sarah and Marie. Again, guys, if there's any questions that people have throughout this, or anything you've learned off the back of it, or you have any sort of questions off the back of a point we've made, feel free to jump in. And Paul, a question I wanted to ask you. So we hear this word Generation Z or Generation Z being a sort of certain age group, but upon research, I found they were actually being known as the loneliest generation. And so a question I wanted to ask you really is, how can we prevent the next wave of talent, looking at a job perspective, or the next wave of people from experiencing the loneliness?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question to kind of answer as well, because I guess it's subjective to how everybody kind of uses technology, I find. So like, I guess calling Generation Z the loneliest tends to be probably because they spend more time maybe using technology or utilizing technology than other generations previously to them would have. Now, having been having grown up around technology and having mobile phones since my teens and stuff like that, I know that they were definitely heavily integrated in just society in general at the time. Whereas before that, I suppose before we were able to kind of use stuff like Facebook or Instagram or this kind of thing, we were all outside. We didn't have exposure to any of them kind of technologies. And I think one of the most important things for our generation to do now, and any generations that follow, is to educate people correctly on how to use these tools. I'll give you a funny example. I pretty much never used LinkedIn at all, and I had a profile, but I had it for I'd say a couple of years before I really ever posted anything on it. Now, as far as I was concerned at the time, I could have been putting up selfies. I could have done it all day until the cows came home. I had no real idea on how to network with it, how to use it to benefit myself. It was until I went to a webinar with Code Institute, where I believe it was Jane Gormley, and it might have just been Jane, the one that I went to, but there was Code Institute staff at it, and they were basically going through how to use LinkedIn, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that existed. Oh, this thing's down here. Oh, that thing's down there. I would have completely misused it. Now, that wasn't there wouldn't have been a negative outcome to me misusing it, but you can imagine that if I was using, let's say, Instagram or Facebook and LinkedIn and all this different collection of tools that we've been exposed to all at the same time, and I'm unaware of how maybe they're influencing me, it can lead to a snowball effect. Let's say one negative comment on something that's connected to something else can lead to a snowball effect, and then you're kind of unsure as to how to deal with it. So you either delete everything, or you kind of have to educate yourself about it. Now, I suppose the best way of combating something like loneliness, especially in a younger generation, is, I found, just speak to them on level. Because I think if you were to write documentation, let's say on LinkedIn or Instagram, as to, oh, well, this is how you like something, this is how you share this post or something like that, I think it's very hard to hold attention. I think it has to be made in kind of a do-it-yourself kind of way, where you're not really doing it with training wheels, but you're exposed to the different options that you have, and you're educated as to how how each action might actually influence you unknowingly, if that makes sense. I suppose in one sentence, what you consume kind of consumes you. So you have to come at it with the idea that if you're consuming negative media or negative technologies or using stuff the wrong way, then in turn that can kind of negatively affect you.
Agreed. No, it's an interesting point about LinkedIn. even just sort of, pushing the boat out a little bit and trying something new. I know from our conversations we had prior to this, Paul, you said it just opened up a whole different world to you. People reaching out to you for support, which in turn, helps you to support them, and really sort of benefits you and also benefits them. So yeah, for anybody in this call, if you haven't got LinkedIn, go download a profile right now, get involved, because advice as a recruiter for people wanting to get into the software engineering space, LinkedIn is your best friend. It's going to help you to network, to see what cool tech companies you want to be involved with, what sort of position you might want to go for, videos on, software engineering tips. There's just so much on there, and it's a free platform. And yeah, I say to a lot of people, it's my bread and butter at work, because it's how I network with people, it's how I find candidates, it's how I connect with clients. And yeah, if you haven't joined it yet, even just spend 5-10 minutes this evening on it. I'm sure once you build a profile, it's really going to benefit you. And yeah, it's like the job search's Facebook. It's a place, if you want to be in the network and you want to be finding something new, you want to be pursuing a career, LinkedIn is an awesome place to start. But that's yeah. Of course, go for it.
Time off of that real quick. Just get off my little soapbox of LinkedIn as well. Full advocate, completely do it. Professional profile, look around and see what kind of structure everybody does. But just an advocate. I got my job from Microsoft through LinkedIn. A recruiter like yourself, George, reached out to me personally, sent me a message, as well as with General Motors. And it was something that was never on my radar, because, I was like, there's no way. But when they reached out to me directly, it's, oh, wow, this really does show what I can do. It's a online virtual resume that can be a lot more detailed than a one pager of a resume, with skills. You can do online learnings, trainings, all of that kind of stuff. And it's, again, just going back, getting on your soapbox too, strong advocate for it. And Paul, I'm very glad you got on it, and look where you are now.
It's awesome. No, and David Campo in the chat, you saying you may need a LinkedIn lecture. Feel free to reach out to myself after this, or you go through LinkedIn. There's step-by-step videos, how to set your profile, how to get noticed, what to add to it, and all that sort of good stuff. So yeah, feel free to reach out on either of those sites. So that's that. And then moving into our next point, is and something I think, and I think we've spoken about it already, is very, very important, is to get people talking about their well-being. And I personally have got a point I'll share, but before I do, Paul, a question I wanted to sort of send out to you is, what actions can be taken to get people talking about not only loneliness but their well-being?
Yeah, so I think the way that it's kind of, I feel it's kind of related to the earlier question, where there was kind of like a stigma about loneliness, that there seems to be this idea amongst society that we can't come forward with having some sort of a problem with loneliness, or that there is an issue with actually speaking about it. So I guess the best way for us to kind of start conversations is to do stuff like this, is to have webinars with real people, where we come in and we talk, and we're able to kind of hash out these ideas and show that, look, you can come from any background, you can do any job, and you can still be lonely. It doesn't matter what part of your journey you're in. Loneliness is going to affect everybody, and I'm sure it affected everybody in different amounts during coronavirus as well. Some people were extremely lonely, some people were only a small bit lonely, but how we deal with that, I feel, as a community, it's the most important aspect. And I think having representation from people in the industry that you're in, that you can relate to, let's say, because maybe somebody who's in tech feels a different kind of loneliness than somebody who's in a different job or has a different background or something like this. Having a relatable kind of figure that you can, for lack of a better phrase, anchor onto and relate to, that can help massively. Like, I know for myself, like when I was struggling doing the Code Institute course, there's a platform that the students were using called Slack. And there was a lot of people that were at the same stage in the course that I was on. And like, if I was struggling with something, I kind of found it harder to reach out to them because they were at the same stage as me than I would have to somebody, let's say, that was 6 months ahead of me. I felt like maybe they would have had more experience, or they would have dealt with the issue or something like that. And the funny part was if I reached out to somebody that was further ahead of me, I actually got less responses than the people who were in the exact same place, because I feel like they were struggling with the same thing, but I kind of boxed myself off from people that were on the exact same journey as me. And I guess that's the thing about like loneliness or struggling with something, is that you nearly isolate yourself. And it's understanding that by reaching out to somebody else, or even helping somebody else, like we mentioned earlier, it can snowball. You could help somebody else, who in turn helps somebody else, then they come back to you and they could end up helping you. So I guess like just having a representation of normal people doing the same thing, talking about struggles, talking about the issues that they have had, and showing that it's okay, and showing that I would support you, or you would support me, or anybody else that's in this chat. I think that's kind of the way forward, because like for me personally, I could read 100 articles published on loneliness online, and probably none of it will go through my head. But if I listen to one person talk about it, and I really understood their experience, and I said, oh wow, I can actually relate to that. I remember feeling like that before. That would probably have more impact with me, and I would take action on that quicker than if I just read an article, you know? So I guess, yeah, I suppose kind representation.
Yeah, for sure. And as you said, get people talking is a big thing. I think something from my personal perspective is at Trust and Soda, you know, we're a very sort of close-knit team. Although, you know, you may not know somebody right down the other end of the office by first name, you may not have spoken to them that much, but in our sort of closer teams, we're very close with our managers and our peers in the team as well. And something that we do each month is, and this is more in a sort of a professional setting to get people talking rather than more of a personal setting, but when we do a review each month of our performance and what our plan is for the next few months, we'll always have a mental well-being form that we can fill out. And it's an optional, you know, you don't have to fill it out, but you know, if you don't fill the form out, it's not okay, everything's fine. Then, you know, the managers will dig a little bit deeper into that, and there's a few follow-up questions in your review that you will fill out personally before sort of going into that meeting. And even if you say no, everything's okay, everything's fine, they'll say, okay, well, are you sure? You know, you didn't want to write it down, but tell me if there is anything. And you know, I'd like to think, you know, once you work with somebody, they can be a good judge of character for you. And often you notice when somebody's not quite right, when they're maybe not at 100% that day. And ask the question, you know, everything may be fine, but ask the question and find out. Don't leave yourself thinking, oh, I wish I would have asked that person if they're okay. Because often you think to yourself, I wish somebody would have asked me just one more time and maybe I would have said something to them. So that's something from personal experience, and I've, you know, had very long in-depth chats with my managers about my personal life that maybe I wouldn't have come out with just off the cuff myself. So yeah, it's very beneficial. And I think, Paul, as you said, you know, getting in the Slack chat for anybody from Code Institute listening to this now, if there is anything you're struggling with, you know, reach out. I know Jim Morrell is a fantastic guy. I know he's head of community, and he always says he's more than happy with to listen to things with open ears and welcome people with open arms. So yeah, that's just one point. Reach out to Paul, myself, Sarah Marie, people in Code Institute, family, friends. If there is something, you know, reach out to these people. And all these things as well for anybody that's doing the hackathon. Take note of anything we're discussing now, anything you're thinking of, and think how you can be applying that to your projects in the next week as well, which is the exciting bit that's coming up as well. So yeah, into the next point. I think you know, something I wanted to really ask is you know, around technology. So I think, you know, certainly I feel that technology can swing both ways in terms of helping and also sort of making you feel a little bit more distant and disconnected. But a question really for you, Paul, I wanted to ask is really around social media. So, I mean, obviously social media, as we said, has led to a decrease in sort of meaningful in-person interactions, which are, you know, necessary really to counteract feelings of loneliness. But how would you feel we can change sort of the negative implications of social media? Again, a very tough question.
Yeah, it is a bit of a tough one as well. I guess it's about understanding I think everybody has to kind of approach social media like it's a double-edged sword. Like there's so many benefits that you can get from it, and the support network that you can get, like for likes of LinkedIn, I suppose you could count it as social media, but it's also, I suppose it's a promotional tool as well. But then you have different forms of this social media that we're actually using. So I guess the best way to kind of decrease it would be to see, this is the thing, it's a tricky one. It's to kind of have a balanced, for lack of a better phrase, a balanced diet. If you're going to be using, let's say, social media for 1 or 2 hours a day, make sure that you're complementing that social media diet with something else for 1 or 2 hours a day. Or like Sarah Marie said, make sure you're going out and spending time in nature, maybe for 1 hour. Or if you love cooking, go downstairs and cook. And hell, you could be cooking while you're watching a video on YouTube, and you're kind of counteracting it as you're going. I suppose just finding a balance that works for you, so that, like, look, I'm guilty of it too. I'm not going to lie. There's been days where I've woke up and the first thing I've looked up at, and I checked my LinkedIn, or I've checked my Instagram, or I've went onto Slack, or what I mean? We all have them days where we wake up and we check something as well. But I think the realization that if you're checking social media first thing in the morning, it's probably like, if you're having your Instagram dose or your LinkedIn dose before you're having your breakfast, it's probably taking up a bit too much time. So I guess having a kind of routine that you can stick to that isn't overburdening for you is going to be beneficial in kind of decreasing the negative effects, whether it's screen glare and your eyes are getting tired, or you're getting overly tired from spending too long on it, and just kind of expanding that across the community to the extent that everyone is kind of helping each other and informing each other of, like, oh, well, maybe you're spending too much time doing this, maybe you should take a break. That kind of perspective, I think. I don't know what you think about that, Sarah Marie.
Sorry, mute button again.
You're
um, no, I completely agree, and I love how you just said it. I never thought of it that way. Sort of combat it with doing, X amount, like a balanced diet, X amount on, X amount off, or hybrid, as you had as you had said. And I think I too, when I was going to sort of date myself, I am an elder millennial. So I would, on the cusp, I would use Facebook all the time. And when I was at my university, it was Facebook, Facebook, Facebook. How many friends do you have? It didn't matter how well you knew them. You met them once, and all of a sudden it's, hey, I know all of these people. When in reality, I had probably a group of 15 really close friends at the time. But on Facebook, it was like, oh, look how many friends. And I remember I did, like, this, for lack of a better word, I just did a purge. I just went through and cleaned out people that I literally spoke to once or met once. And because I realized I didn't need to share what I was doing in my life with people who didn't really care, or I didn't care for them to know. I wanted that. And especially as I got older and now with my son, I don't need everyone to see all of the pictures I share, which also have significantly shrunk my posts. Again, to date myself, I posted a picture of, I think, my son. It had like 150 likes, and I was like, that's great. And my friend, who was a younger millennial, he's like, oh, I get that on a normal day. And I was like, well, that's good for you, but for me, these are people I know. I can go through and tell you probably almost who every person is. And to me, that was more important than, it's people I knew, connected with, who, liked this photo of my son that I thought was really cute, versus having hundreds of likes from people I just didn't know. And we're just doing it of sort of the scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type thing. And I've definitely learned, as I've been learned to have a balanced diet of social media. Yes, I still maybe check it first thing in the morning, but at the same time during the workday, I scale back. I also combat it by, again, this might not be social media, but I don't have my work email on my phone. That was a decision I personally made, because when I'm off of work, I am off of work. And actually, our manager actually encourages not to do that. I do have Teams, so we can still chat if we need. But if it's an email, unless it's urgent, I don't have it on my phone. And that's, again, I know it's not social media, but it is technology. In a sense, it is kind of work social media, so to speak. And that's all part of finding that balanced diet of what what is truly pertinent and figuring out that work-life balance, and not even work-life balance, just like personal life balance of balancing family, me time. Like I love my family, but there are times I just, I think in a couple of weeks, I'm just taking the day off to, our nanny will be with our son, and I am just going to read a book. And I am so excited, like just completely unplug, not worry. So yeah.
Yeah, it's no, it's it's nice to hear this, that taking a break, sort of taking a back seat from work emails or social media, and so many times I hear it, people feel so much better for it. And as Oliver just put in the chat, to sort of back that point up, he said, I feel like my well-being improved significantly, sorry, once I stopped posting on Instagram. It's like Pringles, once you pop, you can't stop. And yeah, very well summed up, Oliver, I must say. It's it's something that even when I was younger, post on Instagram, I used to spend half an hour editing a photo to make sure it fitted perfectly and how I wanted it to fit. So my Instagram looked in a certain way, and my bio was something that now I would never think of having. And it would be like, I'd get 250 likes, I'd be like, oh my god, yeah, that's okay. And now I'm lucky if I get like 60 or 70 likes, but I'm putting up one photo every couple of months. Sometimes I won't post for 6 months. I'll be like, best I post a photo of me on holiday from last year, and you're getting to the point now where I'm not glued to it 24/7. And if I'm going to be sort of looking at more social media, it's meaningful. Like, I'm going to go onto LinkedIn, it's where it's going to benefit me, or I'm going to sort of jump on, like a WhatsApp with friends. I'm going to speak with friends. I'm not just going to go through, oh, they look really good in that photo, I don't look like that. That upsets me. Makes you feel disconnected. Again, it's I think it's a very good, and I think as we mentioned earlier, Generation Z or Generation Z, it's something that a lot of people brought up now in this just mobile phone world. Remember when I used to have to bump phones together with Bluetooth to get songs from each other? And now it's like, I've got iPods, iPads, Apple Watches, everything's so advanced, and I love that technology. But sometimes you do think, I wish I could go back to the days where you go knock at a friend's house and be like, oh, can someone so-and-so come out and play? Can we just go to the park and you get £1 or £2 or euros or dollars or whatever, just to go buy some sweets and a chocolate bar, and be like, oh my god, this is the best life ever, just being out with friends and living in the moment.
Yeah, I think if I can add on real quick as well, for me, the independence of not being disconnected was learning to drive. And when I was at General Motors, it was actually a big decrease in car sales because kids who were the age of, I guess weren't kids, young adults at the age of driving weren't interested in buying a car or having a parent buy a car or, whatever, because everything was on their phone. We had a whole discussion about it because for me, that was my freedom. That was my independence. I would go see my best friend. I would go to a movie. I would go bowling, go do something and be present. Whereas, not saying that you're not present online, but they knew they could just do FaceTime real quick, and that was their interaction that they needed from the comfort of their home. And the drive to drive wasn't there because they didn't need it. It wasn't it was, oh, I'll see them at school. Like, yeah, I would see my friend at school, but I'd want the independence to be in the car, listen to my music, go there. This is my mission. And yeah, it's interesting how fast technology changed, because I'm not that old. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, no, I agree. For anyone here, I'm 22 and I was back in school, and so that's changed in the last 10 years. I left school when I was about 11, primary school. So in the last 11 years, that's how quick. I mean, when I was in primary school, it was bumping your Nokia phones together to get something from the charts at that time. And yeah, it's now obviously in the day and age where soon enough there'll be flying cars, I'm sure. Um, but sort of coming just on to a couple of sort of last points, and I think, Sarah Marie, something you summed up really well when we spoke separately was about organizations supporting their employees. Now, something that I think you summed up really nicely when we were speaking is ensuring that your employer is the right one for you and how they're helping with the mental health of their staff. And So a question I wanted to point point towards you then is how can organizations support their employees to overcome, not only loneliness, but, sort of help with their mental health?
Yeah, so I think you also said something very nice is making sure where you work is a place you want to work. It's supportive for you, it allows you room to grow, all of the above, not just that it's a cool company. You like what you're doing, you can see where you can go, and sometimes that isn't easy. Sometimes you might find your dream job, but it's a very toxic environment that makes you feel isolated and lonely. I am very fortunate. I am very, very happy at Microsoft. And one thing that they do, and I will let Paul speak for Google because I don't know how they run, but they allow mental health days as well as sick days. So there could be a day, and I'm using that in 2 weeks. I'm super excited, but it could be tomorrow. I say, I don't feel like working. I am burnt out. I need time just for myself to go shopping, to sleep, to binge watch, to read, to cook, to do whatever, go on a walk, go to the pool, get a massage. It doesn't matter. You don't have to justify it. You just say, I'm taking a mental health day. And it's essentially saying, I'm not at my best right now. I need time to recoup, get back into my own self, feel good and recharged so I can be my best at the office. Because when I'm the best at the office, I can do my best work. And right now, that's not that. Um, and so it used to be it was like 5 sick days and 5 mental health days. Now they've just combined because, mental health is in a sense, but it's not a kind of a sick day. You just need the time to recharge and recover yourself. So I think that is something, again, Paul, you speak to Google, but as a company, big companies, small companies, realizing, as I mentioned earlier, burnout is a real thing. And I think if it was possible for schools to figure that out too, whether that be, hey, every quarter or every other month, we're just having a fun day, take a break from school. Let's get popsicles, come in, let's play games all day. Let's just completely recharge and reboost. Or, maybe some kid is not getting good sleep. It's like, or you can just nap for 2 hours, but it's still, you're in the area, you're in a safe space where you can grow and be who you need to be and be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's awesome. I think we said as well, it's something that personally at Soda we've been doing as well is, if you need to take time away, you need to take that day, then go for it. If you're gonna come back in the next couple of days feeling fresher, feeling better for it, then do it. And we have a really great sort of perks as well where we can subscribe to Headspace for free. You can do meditation. We have mindfulness days. We can take charity days as well. If you want to give back and get in a charity day, that might help to clear you and feel like you're giving back. As Paul said earlier, helping others, has helped him as well. So yeah, some very valuable points, and I think something that companies need to mature with as well, isn't it? I mean, personally, our company, we've implemented period leave for women in the business that may be really struggling one day, rather than be forced into an office or forced to work at home. If they really do feel unwell, they can take a day. They have a few days a year they can take. So it's companies like that, maturing and adapting to their workforce. Now I'm just conscious we've got a few minutes left. So a couple of questions I've got here. One of them will be a poll as we're closing out. And everybody can answer that as it comes up. I'll come on to that in just one second, but something I wanted just to ask both Sarah Marie and Paul is, from what we've spoken about today and the whole theme of loneliness and mental health, what are your hopes for the future? I'll throw it out to Paul first.
Yeah, I guess my hopes for the future is a continuation and expansion of kind of what Sarah Marie was talking about there. Companies opening up and recognizing that this idea of this burnout culture and that you have to work through stuff and hold it in and just get more work done, that is put to the background, and that the person working for them and the community at large is put to the foreground, and that your mental health is put first. That you're given the ability to have paid days off, to be able to do whatever you need to do to be 100% yourself again. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. And I think the more and more that we continue to recognize this and to basically structure workplaces and our communities around it, the better things are going to come from it, you know. So yeah, I suppose just a continuation and expansion of the recognition of mental health and how we can deal with it healthily.
Awesome.
I think everything Paul said, and just to go off, just for people to talk about it, as I get on my little soapbox, it's not a taboo. Making sure people realize it's okay to talk about, even if it's just one person, and as well as being the person listening to help other people. Listen for those small, subtle hints, whether they're there or not. Worst cases, they're just like, oh, I'd love to get coffee, and that's it. But it could mean a big difference for someone who really is trying to reach out, just doesn't know how. So I think it's everything Paul said, talking about it, not, making, in a sense, a big deal that it's anything negative, but just also listening as well. You have to be on both sides for loneliness, and you're not alone, as ironic and cheesy as that sounds, but it's one of those things that a lot of people experience, and being able to reach out and talk and listen with one another and support one another, I think will definitely provide the step in the right direction.
Awesome. And yeah, I think there's been some really, really valuable points raised on here. And I think we certainly give the students a lot to think about to build their projects with. Whether that's going to be, an app to get connected with each other, like a messaging app, or whether that's going to be, what physical activities are going on. Is there a bike riding club in the area? How to get connected to that. And I'll be very impressed if somebody steals one of them and makes it into an idea. Actually, I'd be great to see that. But again, I think so. We've got our networking session going to be starting in just 1 minute. Lucy has put the link very kindly. There we go, into the chat. I know Paul may be joining us, but I think Sarah Marie may have to shoot off as she's actually in the US, and she's probably in the middle of her day right now. Oh, sorry.
I moved the meeting. I can make it.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's awesome. If everybody wants to jump on there, we'll be on there in the next couple of minutes. But as we're closing out, we lastly have how to use technology to feel connected. So we've got a long list of options on there. If everybody would like to put in their poll answer, then we will collate the results after this as well. But I think we've got about 30 seconds probably left. And then we'll join over onto the networking session. So yeah, please use the link put into the chat, which is the separate Zoom link, and that'll be running for around 30 minutes. So yeah, that's it. Thank you everybody for joining us. Really do appreciate you, sharing your passions and insights from the panel. And again, a wonderful audience for participating and joining us. And yeah, for sure, best of luck on everybody's projects if you're not going to join us in a minute. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.
Talk soon.
Lovely.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks a lot.